Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to an album review of the new Mono album, Nowhere Now Here. Mono is a Japanese instrumental band that since 1999 has been producing some of the most interesting, experimental, avant-garde, and classical music. And that style of music doesn't really change on this album over here. Jumping straight into the review, let's talk about the first track, God Bless, which to me feels like a prequel to the song after it, called After You Comes the Flood. And I don't know I don't know if it's me or not, but I don't know why they decided to do this. It's not a bad way to start off the album, although I wish it was done differently. Maybe transitioning into the track rather than kind of just growing and then grows into the next track, and then you get this crescendo and whatnot, which is exactly what the song After You Comes the Flood has. It includes a fantastic crescendo that packs a loud punch that only grows from there. Great guitars, great drums, great everything. After every time signature on this album, there seems to be a new instrument or a different guitar riff, a note change that appears, but it just keeps growing, and it gets louder and more bombastic as you listen to it. The ending of this track, however, is kind of upsetting because the way it ends is just kind of dimming out and then abruptly stopping the song, is my best way of putting it, I guess, because I wish they would have kind of faded away more instruments, kind of just faded out instead of kind of fading and then abruptly stopping it. It isn't really that satisfying, but nevertheless, this is still a good track off the album. The song Breathe is the only song on this album to include lyrics. The vocals on this track seem to be drawn out every time they enunciate another word, and the lyrics can almost barely be heard. I'd much rather have them have a louder, more interesting sound rather than kind of being quiet. It is more stripped back on its instrumentation in the first half, but then in the second half it flourishes into this nice, more melodic and brighter sound. It incorporates the use of strings and percussion very nicely. The track isn't as bombastic or as loud as the other one before it, but I'm pretty sure the next one will be. At 10 minutes in length, the song Nowhere Now Here is another crescendo that I will describe as a collision between After You Comes the Flood and Breathe. The strings, the guitars, the percussion, everything comes together so nicely and is spread out very cleanly across the track. The use of reverb and distortion really bring the song character. Since it is so long, you have to kind of accompany that boring part where it's kind of like the build-up. Sometimes it's usually boring, but on this song, being that it's 10 minutes, I didn't find myself bored, not once, while listening to this track. What this track has that other tracks before it didn't is a good ending that actually fades away instead of abruptly ending. Far and Further are very forlorn in its appeal. It is slow and dramatic, and the build-up is very nice as well, but while the build-up on this track is dramatic, the zenith of Farther and Further isn't as loud as the other tracks before were. The next track, Sorrow, brings back the monstrous crescendo that was seen on the Nowhere Now Here and After You Comes the Flood tracks. The distortion on the guitars after the 6-minute mark is exceptional. As the track goes on, it gets quicker and the instruments start to pile up. But again, this track suffers from what a couple of the other songs do, and that is an abrupt ending. Parting is a beautiful piece of music that is very classical and includes the basic orchestral instruments that you would see at a opera or opera house, I would say. It is a quick track, around 4 minutes, but is still a very interesting track. Another very forlorn track on this album is Meet Us Where the Night Ends. While it is not as fast as other tracks, but still it's grand in its presentation. Yet another crescendo track that actually has not one but two crescendos, incorporating some deep and dark strings into the mix after the second half of the song. Funeral Song is what I would describe the next track. Funeral Song. It is probably the most forlorn track on this album. Not having as many instruments as other tracks before it and even tracks after it, it is probably the most stripped back song on the entire album, and it kind of is a breather track to me. Vanishing Maybe is, in my opinion, a very good way to end the album. It has the same formulaic build-up and grandiose apex that other tracks do, but it is not as loud, and it's actually one of the more quieter songs on the album. Overall, this is a good album. Mono isn't the usual run-of-the-mill post-rock band that you hear every day. Rather, they incorporate instruments in a very interesting way. They aren't using the same instruments in every track, but rather they're using different instruments in the same way on different tracks. However, sometimes Mono ends songs abruptly or has a bunch of space between where the song ends versus where the timestamp says it ends, and I feel like it could have been trimmed down quite a bit. Nevertheless, this is a great album. For those who enjoy the post-rock kind of style and might enjoy the classical kind of aesthetic, this is an album that might be for you. With its heavy guitars at some points and the beautiful orchestral instrumentation at other points, it is a very good album. You could say I'm enjoying this album. I am feeling an 81 on this album. Very good. Very, very good album. I enjoyed it quite a bit. With that said, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you listened to this album, what was your opinion? What was your take on this album? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.